welcome to another edition of Ethan's Movie Lounge. And in this edition, we look at Lynne Ramsay's Morvern Callar. And man, this is one intense film. And of course, if you know anything about Lynne Ramsay and her extraordinary filmography, you know that her films are nothing short of amazing and intense. And Morvern Callar is definitely no exception to that. Of course, Samantha Morton plays the titular character of Morvern Callar, and the film is itself pretty fucked up in a way. That what it basically is her boyfriend is a writer, and after he finishes his great novel that he's been like laboring over for, it's not really disclosed how long it took him to write this novel, but then the beautiful thing about Lynne Ramsay is most of her films are adapted from books, and she has a way of fully putting novels onto the screen because you really have to like watch the images and listen to the conversations. Not everything is 100% spelled out for you, and that right in and of itself is, you know, pure brilliance, and that's what the cinema is supposed to be for. So when I call Lynne Ramsay pure cinema, that's no like lip service. That's real shit. You know, that woman is pure fucking cinema. But the dude, like, he's been writing this novel, finishes it, and then decides to kill himself on Christmas Eve, no less. And so when Morvern Callar discovers her boyfriend dead, he leaves a suicide note, which is probably one of the most fucked up suicide notes that I've ever seen in a movie, or, you know, not that I've seen too many suicide notes, but the fact that is that don't try to understand it. It just felt like the right thing to do. And, you know, which probably the most badass suicide note. You know, it's fucked up, badass, or something. It gets to the point. You know, this dude really felt like, you know, that was going to be what he needed to do, and leaves the book for her to like get published and all this shit, and leaves money for the funeral. She says, fuck all that. She basically takes the book and puts her name on it and passes it off to the publishers. Doesn't even like give this dude a funeral. Doesn't tell anybody this motherfucker is dead either. You know, just leaves him laying in the apartment until she decides, oh, let me cut this motherfucker up and bury him and all this shit. And, you know, dude got her a bunch of great, like, Christmas presents too. Got a nice fucking jacket and a damn Walkman with a fucking tape that he made her and shit, you know. And we hear that music all through the film. That's another thing that Lynne Ramsay's really great at, is putting music in her films. Like, the music there is definitely not put there at random. It's done so to really accentuate the fucking images and the feelings that these characters are going through. And of course, Samantha Morton gives an incredible, very internal performance. And another beautiful thing about Lynne Ramsay's films, not a lot of dialogue in the film. I think the film goes like a whole 5 minutes before like a single word is spoken. And even then, you know, you're led to really see the internal struggle of these characters, because you've got very great actors in the film. You know, even the woman that plays Morvern's friend, you know. And the thing about it is, like, she just continues to go about her business. You know, she doesn't really let it, you know, get her down. The dude killed himself, and, you know, she's not telling anybody. Nobody believes her anyways when she actually does, because, you know, her and her friend had already planned to go to Spain. They said, we're going to Spain and do the thing. And when she tells her friend, you know, like, he's dead, and, you know, like, oh, I can't deal with your moods and stuff. So, and then they fucking part ways. You know, it's basically a woman trying to find herself, you know, with just her whole world has just been completely severed from her and stuff, you know. So she's got to make it her own, and she definitely does. And the music in the film, the song that we just heard at the beginning, is just that ending fucking shot of her in the club with her fucking headphones in, and just the images like this, that right there is the brilliance of Lynne Ramsay, because like the sound, the music, and the images, like that fucking I'm stuck like glue, and she's cutting the dude up. I'm like, and you don't see a lot of like the gore, you know. You see the blood, you know, no more honestly than necessary, you know, because, and then even the same thing with the nudity, you know. Samantha Morton does show a lot of skin in this movie, as there's a lot of actresses in Lynne Ramsay's films, but they're definitely a director these actresses who trust to really get to the center of the performance and not really have the nudity in there to be titillating or sexy in any way. It's just raw nakedness type thing. Very Lynne Ramsay is a Scottish filmmaker, and the Scottish cinema is not as like prominent internationally. She's one of the biggest like figures in that. She doesn't do that many films, but when she does, they pack a hell of a punch. And I would honestly say like we need to talk about Kevin, maybe her best film, but if I'm talking personally, I gotta go with Morvern Callar, because this movie, the images, the acting, just this is a maybe even a little bit of a personal work of art, but this film in particular is just so heartbreakingly beautiful that it is the fucking cinema, in a way that like most art house filmmakers of this ilk do not understand how to make an actual movie as well, because the plot moves pretty well. She ends up selling the book, getting paid in the process, and she just kind of breaks away with her friend. She's going on a journey all her own. Her dude, and he says in the little message, "Be brave" and all this shit. And honestly, that's probably the biggest fuck you she can give this guy, because like, dude fucking kills himself on Christmas, leaves her with all this shit, and like the one claim to fame he would have had writing that fucking book, she takes that away from him, and honestly probably shouldn't have been a bitch and killed himself type thing. So that's it. What another beautiful thing about Lynne Ramsay's films is a lot of them are very morally complex films. There's no cut and dry to it. Probably the most cut and dry of her films are You Were Never Really Here with Joaquin Phoenix. That dude's taking out pederasses. There's no two ways about that. But something like We Need to Talk About Kevin. That whole doubt of like, is the kid really fucked up, or is the mother just an insane bitch? That kind of shit. And but a lot of her films just very devastating, like Ratcatcher and Morvern Callar, especially like those scenes in Spain are some of the most well shot, and just like there's just a haunting just undertone to it, where it's like you honestly don't even like, for all the fucked up things that Morvern does in the film, you don't really like, you're on her side the whole time, because like you can tell like she's not a bitch, she's not an asshole, like she's just a sweet girl that probably doesn't have that much ambition, maybe a little simple-minded and shit. And Samantha Morton plays it fucking brilliantly. Like, I mean, the English actors are some of the best. You can't when they even come over to America and outshine most American actors. In the American accent, no less. But when they really can get a director like Lynne Ramsay to fucking direct them, like they're gonna go to the fucking moon. And and of course Lynne Ramsay's latest effort, Die My Love. You can see my quickie review on that. That's another explosive film. Taking two actors like Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson and giving them a chance to really go beyond the craft that they truly appreciate, but are not really able to fully exercise with the types of films that they get. And in a way, it's like you get Katniss and Edward facing off against each other, so, but it's more than that. I think it's at that fucking point where those two are finally able to shed their fucking preteen fucking fan fiction personas and shit. But specifically though, it's got to be Morvern Callar for me when I'm talking like anything Lynne Ramsay. Of course, You Were Never Really Here comes close, and even We Need to Talk About Kevin, but it's this one, for just the sheer insanity that it is. Like, this is what makes Lynne Ramsay a great filmmaker. Somebody that truly understands the cinema and just really makes like just deep, personal, emotional films that like will fucking, make you question what is right or wrong, so to speak. Because I mean, you could argue that maybe she should have just told somebody the dude killed himself, and she probably wouldn't have seen any of that money. Like I said, it's a big fuck you to that shit. Maybe the family should have seen some money, but then again, like the dude wrote the book, and how much would he had done, all that shit comes into question. And the beauty of it is we don't know too much of the backstory, So we can't like judge too much on that. We need to judge by the actions, not by how we got here or anything like that. You know, it's like I said, pure cinema brilliance. So if you want to be on Ethan's Movie Lounge, you got a specific film or director or like movement, whatever the fuck you want to talk about. These will pop up. You'll see me mostly by myself, but I'll occasionally have experts. I really can't find anybody that I know that's as passionate about Lynne Ramsay as I am and her extraordinary filmography. So this one was a solo round. But this is only episode 2 of Ethan's Movie Lounge. So, you know, I'll try to do one at least every week or whatever the fuck I get inspiration for it. Of course, you see 70s versus 90s when at least once a week, once or twice a week, you'll see, and then maybe 3 bonus rounds, you know, if I got nothing else to do type shit. And the quickie reviews will come whenever the fuck I see a movie in theaters. And the very rare, elusive second takes series is when, you know, if I feel so compelled as to see a movie a second time in theaters. And that doesn't really happen that often. But of course, like I said, check out my quickie review for Die My Love, the new film by Lynne Ramsay, you know, an extraordinary cinematic artist. There's really nobody like her in the cinema. You know, there may be a few that come close, you know, female and male directors, but, you know, she's definitely in a class all of her own that, like, you know, where it's like somebody that, like, maybe even Godard would have been proud to say, like, they know the cinema. You know, they would have had to admit that. But hit me up if you want to be on Ethan's Movie Lounge. This shit will be, as you can tell, I've seen a lot of movies, very passionate about the shit. I'd love to meet other people that actually know the cinema, that just don't jerk off to the gaslight and bullshit and want to just really just like shoot the shit about real ass cinema. Get down to the nitty and the gritty of what makes the cinema great. And one of the reasons, motherfucking Lynne Ramsay, motherfucking Morvern Callar. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's a fucking masterpiece. And discover any of Lynne Ramsay's films. So this has been another edition of Ethan's Movie Lounge. Stay tuned for more. I'm Ethan. It's my motherfucking lounge.